Hello and welcome to DocSend's Perfect Pitch video series, where we put our research and data to work to help you fundraise. My name is Justin Itzo and I run research here at DocSend. Today's video is titled The First 4 Must-Have Slides in Your Seed Deck. And the data that we're going to look at today comes from DocSend's 2020-2021 Seed Report. Let's dive in. So what we want to study today are the first 4 slides that should appear in your seed deck. This is what we've seen the vast majority of companies that successfully fundraised in our data set use to open their decks with. These are the company purpose slide, the problem slide, the solution slide, and the market size slide. Now, it's tempting to think about these sections as individuals, and you should do that. But by the same token, bear in mind when you're putting your deck together that your deck is a narrative, and it should, from an overall holistic point of view, tell a story. So never forget that every deck section is related to other sections. And we're going to explore a little more what this idea means. Let's start with the company purpose slide. Now, this should be the first slide in your deck. And it's where founders should distill their grand vision into a catchy statement. This can be difficult for founders who've spent years sort of thinking about a vision for their company, but it's where you want to really hook investors. And bear in mind that investors are spending about 2 minutes, 30 seconds reviewing an entire deck these days. So they don't have time to really digest complicated company statements of purpose at the beginning of the deck. Rather, what you want to do is hook an investor from the beginning and get them reading and continuing on through the deck. Now, 2 slides can work for this section, but in the majority of cases, what we'd suggest is to aim for 1 compelling sentence on 1 slide. So take your vision and boil it down into 1 sentence. What at bottom, at your broadest level, do you want to do for your company? Investors are spending about 30 seconds on this section. And this means that they'll give some thought to what you've written, but they don't have time to decipher vague language or too much specificity in your purpose statement. So what you want to do is strike a nice balance between breadth and depth in 1 catchy statement. This can be more art than science. So take some time and run your possibilities by friends and advisors to make sure your purpose statement makes sense. The second slide and the third slide, rather, are the problem and solution sections. These are related, of course, and they're slides 2 and 3 respectively. First, think broadly, just like you did for your company purpose slide. What is the 1 problem you're trying to solve with your company? Relatedly, what is the specific solution you're trying to bring to the problem? These aren't long slides either. They're 1, maybe 2 slides max for both. And again, like the company purpose slide, you're trying to distill your problem and the solution you're setting up down into 1, maybe 2 sentences. And there are a couple of questions that I'd ask founders to think about when they're putting these slides together. Are your problem and is your solution relatable? Are they understandable? So would a VC who isn't directly in your space understand the problem you're setting up and the solution you're offering? Would a non-technical person? Would your parents? Would your mom? Would your dad? These are key questions that you should ask yourself when putting these together to make sure that the problem and your solution are not only compelling but relatable. This isn't the space to go into technical detail about your product or where you see your market size growing. Really stay at a broad level of generality and make sure your problem and solution can be understood by most people, whether investors, advisors, or lay people. Finally, the market size section. This is typically the 4th side in seed stage decks. This should be a little bit longer than your purpose, problem, and solution slides, so 1 to 3 pages, which is a bit shorter than the product section, which at the seed stage should be about 3 to 5 pages. That's where you'll go into much more depth. The market size section offers you a little more breadth than these earlier 3 sections, though. And what you want to do is focus on the current opportunities available to potential investors, as well as your company's future growth potential. So think of it this way. Investors, when they're investing in your company, want to think both in the short term and for the long term. They want to de-risk and understand where they can have a return on their investment, in a year or two, and what kinds of market penetration might you have in that time. By the same token, in this section, you also want to think more broadly and offer to investors a sense of where the real future for your space and your product and your company lies. What, at its broadest sense, is the future growth potential for your company? Investors want to see both the short-term and the long-term sides of this question. Now, we found that VCs investigating seed stage decks are going to spend about 40 seconds scrutinizing this section. That may not sound like a lot of time at first glance, but bear in mind that one, VCs are busy folks, and they, any amount of time they're spending on your deck is an investment for them, no pun intended. And they're only spending about 2 minutes, 30 seconds looking at decks as a whole these days. So 40 seconds is a good chunk of that overall time. So if you put together a thorough market size section offering short-term opportunities and future growth potential, investors are willing to give this a thorough read. They're going to want to see that you've put thought into analyzing your current market conditions and future growth potential. To dive deeper into the data, visit DocSend.com/perfectpitch.